Hello, GUADEC. I'm Sri Krishna. I'm here to give my talk. It looks like it's the last talk of the track of the last day. So I hope you had a great GUADEC. And I'm sorry I was not there to spend it with you all, but my circumstances prevented me from traveling, and so I must give this talk in virtually. So with that in place, I'm going to start my talk here. So my talk is Building the Fundraising Engine. My name is Sri Krishna. For those that don't know me, I'm a long-time GNOME contributor who's deeply interested in fundraising and engagement. So that's me. I thought this talk was pretty important to give because it is, I've done a few, or helped in a few fundraising campaigns, and I could see that the community has been quite sensitive about the idea of fundraising and the need for it. So I put this talk together to maybe start this conversation, see what this kind of engine might look like, and how can we prepare to really build something that can scale to something that's sustainable. So we'll first start with the big picture. You know, most of us know that we get funds from community, business, and recently government. So with the SDF funds, so all those goes into the GNOME Foundation. The GNOME Foundation helps out with hackfests and conferences and swag at booths. We have this recent fellowship fund that we're currently doing. We have staff, we have contractors, and we have legal. So these are all the kind of things that we're doing, and we would love to do more, right? And so it really comes on with this quote: fundraising is the right ask to the right person at the right time, right? And I looked at some parts of a lot of this talk is sort of based on Amy Parker's talk, who did a thing called Storytelling, Networking, and Strategy, in 2025. And I really found her talk compelling. So I've taken some aspects of it and saying, okay, how can we apply this to GNOME? So the three things and aspects of fundraising is storytelling. Most people will tell you we need to tell stories. Networking, getting those stories out there, and then strategizing how, when, right? Going back to that quote, everything is about timing, how do we get there, and help donors make a decision to be a donor, right? Potential responsible donors. And as part of that storytelling, when we build stories, we need to understand why do donors give money? And donors give money because they want to make an impact of some sort. The message connects them with them at something that's personal on an emotional level. And then finally, companies give because it aligns with their business, right? So this is why primarily donors, whether they're individuals or corporations or whatever, they give us money because there's something that connects them, that there's an impact. Either there's an emotional, personal, or business, or a business alignment. So this is a study in 2023 with affluent donors reporting like what motivates them, right? It's always good to have some kind of metrics to kind of understand. And here you'll see there's mission, happiness, and being asked. And you'll know that in the mission, you can see that if 60%, and this is if they believe in your mission, they will give us money, or they will give the nonprofit money. And I thought that was a really interesting and compelling metric. There's also this idea of happiness. Like, are the people happy with the things we are doing? And in this case, there's a squishy 55% or so, and then there is this 30% who will give, and then there's a few maybes, right? But in general, happiness is a pretty big factor. But you can see some other things in here that's also kind of interesting. Is spontaneously to a response, or social justice. They're all kind of interesting things for directory. Notice that most don't give because it's a tax write-off. And then finally, being asked, right, is the big thing. And so there's a big chance it's a maybe. It may not be. It may just be a maybe. Not many just say no, but it's like, well, maybe it's not now, right? And then again, it's the idea of this: when is it convenient? And you have to keep asking. So we're starting with storytelling and what is the mission, right? We looked in there, what is the mission? And our mission, at least at the GUADEC Foundation website, says, we believe in a world where everyone is empowered by technology they can trust. We do this by building a diverse and sustainable free software personal computing ecosystem. So that's what our mission is. That's where we have people who align with us without. And that's what our storytelling should be based on. Then there's the networking. Networking always starts with the people you know, your peer groups, so forth. Then people who believe in your core mission. And then communities and networks that value your mission. And then finally there's the general public. So those are in general the kind of audience you have to work with. But the further you go away from your core group, the weaker your connection to it is, right? Clearly, we're not going to have a really super strong connection to the general populace. Trying to explain free software principles, there's a huge lift there. Strategy is understanding when is the right time. So when does that maybe become a yes, right? And that timing is always up to the donor. And there are times when those donors were alert to our messaging, and that's usually around times, especially during our core, right? Milestones in a project, peak time, holiday season. Maybe you're at an event where there's a keynote where you're participating, or something that alerts them to your presence, or a talk. When certain topics are trending on social media, right? This is not an exhaustive list. There could be a completely different set of lists, but these are the things that came to me, and you might have different opinions yourself on what these examples could be based on your experience. So how do we apply this storytelling to networking and strategy, right? So before we get into that, I do want to do a disclaimer. This part of the presentation this is not based on any discussions on the GUADEC board or any actionable plans. This is not something they've reviewed or anything like that. This is my opinion and my ideas based on my experience and observations. So it really is a community effort, and so I want to be clear that there's nothing official going on. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's start talking about storytelling. Let's talk about our strategy. And the first one is telling our stories, right? We can tell our stories through three methods. One, there's the human stories, there is the impact stories, and then there's the value stories, right? So let me go through them and kind of define what these mean, right? The human stories are human or humanistic stories that show GNOME's impact on people or on a community. Now, this is an example. It's fake. There is no such such partnership. But here, GNOME partners with FreeGeek to provide free recycled computers with GNOME pre-installed to children who experience marginalization. Now, FreeGeek is a recycle tech center. People take their junk, their tech junk, they take it to FreeGeek, and they kind of repair it and kind of get it back into a thing, workable shape, and then they sell it or they do something else with it, that kind of thing, right? So they're really in kind of that right to repair type of community. Now, there's a few observations with that very fake story. One, if there was such a thing, it does support our mission of building a personal computing ecosystem. It connects with the children's community, so those folks know that GNOME is helping their community. It connects with low carbon and right to repair communities. So if you're into having a low carbon footprint, this aligns with your values. If you're into right to repair, this aligns with your values. And they see GNOME as a fellow traveler. And of course, having these partnerships demonstrates how powerful they are when trying to build connections. And it gives us the opportunity to make those human connections. Impact stories. Impact stories is where we had a challenge that we overcame and made a positive change, right? One that came to mind, we had at least two of these legal ones, and I picked this one simply because it's more recent. Although I was very involved in the first one, which was a trademark battle with Groupon. But this one shows an impact with numbers that kind of like, somebody attacked us and we turned around and we invalidated their patents. It was a big win for free software. Some observation against we centered our mission. We made working on free software more safe because there's less chance of a patent troll. That led to a big impact on the software industry. We created a legal precedent in the sense that if somebody decides they want to take on GNOME again, there's like at least two different legal case studies or that says, hey, don't attack this plan. They've beaten everyone, right? So it's some form of documentation. We demonstrate that free software is not helpless. We have teeth and we have claws, and people should think twice. And that is a very big impact story. Then there's the value story. Value stories are stories that demonstrate our values to free software by improving our software, right? When we improve GNOME, we're improving the versatility and the utility of free software. And in this case, here by improving ourselves with using our funds to help have Sophie here to establish an RFC part is a value story. And once again, it centralizes our mission. Donors know that their money is having an impact on the future of GNOME and the future of free software. They believe that already that way. We support our volunteer community through opportunity, giving opportunities to the people who give away their engineering time for free. We have giving them a way to upscale themselves in some way, shape, or form. So that's storytelling. Now, let's talk about networking. And the first part of networking is defining and reaching our audiences. We need to define our audience and networks and learn where they're located. So again, as we've said before, the core is your peer networks. And then there's free software, Linux users, and so forth. And again, this is not anything official. This is simply my sorting. We as a community may have to decide what is the right strategy, who is our allies, and so forth. But these are who I believe is important that I've heard and read who value us. Then there's the idea of how to reach your audience. Well, now you know who your audiences are. How do you reach them? So we already talked about those. I sort of got ahead of myself on the slides, but we talked about peer networks. Meet them where they are. That means we're going to meet them reach out to them on social media, in-person events and conferences. The in-person events are pretty powerful because they're local, and it's not like people coming afar and meeting and going away again. I went to one yesterday, and I met a CEO and a CTO and a bunch of other people, and what I said kind of resonated with them in many ways, about especially when it came to safety and data integrity and security. Those are things that an open source project where you know what's in it is something that intrigued them. So it's a great way to find new allies. Especially near your area where you can continually keep out doing your outreach. Then there's TikTok and Instagram for general outreach. And free software. Our whole mission is to grow too, right? If we are a political movement. We want to spread free software. And so sometimes we have to go to places where people congregate, and hopefully some part of our messaging kind of reaches them because it's important. Strategy. So building this strategy to fundraise. We have all these elements. We figured out so how do you put them together? And I think here, this is where the ambassador program and as I demonstrated, the partnership with charities. The ambassador program I really want to center here because they are the kind of folks on the ground, right? If you've been to Aditya's talk, he talks about how he helped build a community for 300 people, and that's amazing because that's 300 people who are doing things locally in their local communities, and there's storytelling there. There's storytelling between the stories of the people who are in that community, or stories that they are doing that affects the community around them, and because they're in person, it really strikes them. That humanistic part, right? Like the seeing and believing, right, is a thing. And that's also why partnership with charities is important, because that's combining the two together. You can create an impact in every neighborhood or country or society you're in around the world. And again, you're supporting the mission in this fashion by doing it in the most purest form of communication humanly given. Then, when it comes to strategy for impact stories, we have like things we're doing with the SDF funds, how we took a bunch of money and did something with it. Same thing, partnering with companies, nonprofits. There are all these impact stories. How are we improving the ecosystem around this? right? Even the story of a flat pack is an impact story where we're creating ways that that giving freedom to software developers to create something and then have it work everywhere ubiquitously. So those are great things. Value stories. We're doing that right now. The fellowship on improvements that solve our problems. Every release is filled with things. Members doing amazing things, contributing in many ways. So all of those things are really, really cool, and people really do enjoy them, and gives them reason to say, hey, GNOME is solving my problem and helping me, and so on. So then moving on to strategy for networking, after all that, identify, so for networking, we want to identify what were, I gave a list of audiences, but it's not an exhaustive list. Let's figure out what those audiences are, where they live, virtually or in person, then map the content you have to the networks that you know, right? You know where those folks are. This is where we're present. Let's try, throwing in some things for right to work or right to repair and so forth, and then figure out what lands, right? So if you have, and then of course if there are places where we should be, then we need to plan how can we have a presence there, so that we can be part of those networks. And in addition, then you want to find allies, domain experts, YouTube influencers, or whatever. I did some of this when using loss as a way to expand our influences, is to do that, right? Is find ways to meet them where they are. Find events and conferences and small meetups. I told you how important the small meetups are. They're extremely powerful. Then there's the leverage and Fedora, the existing community networks like Fedora and Ubuntu and others. They're very mature community networks, and they have a lot of I want to say there's a lot of investment in them. They're a core part of those platforms, and they are promoters in many ways, right? So we want to be able to work with them, allyship, so forth. And so we have this strategy for our content, for our network, and everything is super cool, great, we're done, right? And that's at best. We're missing something. What do you think we're missing? Well, fundraising is like software. You need sustainability. Fundraising isn't just, doing a bunch of campaigns, do the outreach, tell the stories, and then move on to the next one. Once you bring new donors in, you have to keep them. And that means engaging with them and keeping them continue to give us money, because if they're not catered to in some fashion, they'll drop off. And so it's important because that they are our core group, right? They're not just supporters; they're supporters willing to donate month after month to nourish us, right? And so we need to manage and communicate with them in some way or form so they feel valued in some fashion. And so there's a few ways we can do that, right? One is make sure that when we have things we're doing on funded GNOME projects, that we give it to them, especially, and tell them to share it on their network. Just like ours, they have their own networks, and where their core is their peer network. So if a donor is enthusiastic about things they do, let them tell other folks, hey, this is great. This is what they're doing. You should fund it too, right? And remember, a lot of donors are also volunteers. I am both a donor and a volunteer, right? I give in both ways, and so it's important that you give them links that they can use. Periodical asks to increase their contribution. That's an important part. Make sure they have their contributions. Personal communications from the board. Well, maybe if we had levels of where you're silver, gold, or platinum, or something like that, and if you're giving $100 a month, well, you get a personal thank you from all of us in the GNOME boards, and something like that, right? Something that marks their. I remember there was one person who gave $5,000 as a little donor, right? And so I think I was on the board at that time, and we had sent him a card or something, like things like that, right? Roll up the storytelling to the networks per month. That's another thing. So there's also then the other set of donors are your ad board, right? Or your large dollar donors. And you want to encourage them to make sure they're still want to be on the board and stay on the board. So you want to encourage them to get, and you want to do some of the similar things you do with your other donors, right? Well, in this bullet point, we definitely want to have a listen and see what they're doing, because especially if they themselves are using GNOME internally at their company, they have some statecraft, and that's free feedback that we can use that's validated. That's kind of thing. So and especially making sure within the limits and authority of the GNOME Foundation, right? And then make sure that we're sharing the same things we're sharing with others, give them shareable links, we send the FOG, the Friends of GNOME people, send them out, let them do things, that kind of stuff. Copies of the storytelling, all the storytelling we've done for the year, whatever, like, here, this is the great things you did, this is where your money came in, helped our project. And that's maybe something they go and tell their corporate folks, like, hey, this is our impact, especially those values, human value, like we're affecting ecosystems, and they get dragged into the, hey, we help with that, that kind of thing. Finally, another one is managing partnerships. Our networks are going through partnerships. If we have partnerships, they help them. We want to make sure we keep them active. Regular check-ins for our alignment opportunities, aligned storytelling, if that's relevant. Then maybe there's things like right to work that might align with some folks, and they can talk about that. Requests to boost our content to their networks, maybe our newsletter, things like that. Those are great things. And then see if there's other partners. How can we grow? How can we make more partners with others? So, it's that's kind of overwhelming, isn't it? The engagement team is only like 5 to 6 people, and active people who are doing amazing work. To optimize this fundraising engine, though, we need to optimize in a way it should be. We need to grow. We need to be efficient, and 5 to 6 people is not enough to do what I'm talking about. And so there's definitely an onboarding need. We need to grow our team. We've always been undernourished across all the teams, and this is really something that we need to really kind of focus on. Is how can we make this onboarding better? I know personally I've seen people come and go, and how do we keep them here? How do we make it a sustainable, fun place to work? Because it is a volunteer work. It shouldn't feel like work. It should be fun. So that's something we need to think about. And so my closing thoughts is, fundraising is a non-stop cycle. Year to year, we got to get to it. And this engine is going to help us with that. We can do this with the help of the ground community, free software community, and all of that. Our immediate need is to grow, and so the call for action here is that we need to grow a robust group of people who can help with fundraising and onboarding. There are people who could help with the ambassador. So, if you're interested in helping and these challenges excite you, contact. Let's talk. My credit is right message at the right time is so this talk is somewhat adapted from Amy Parker's, who is the Chief Funding Officer for OpenSSL, and a great human being. And of course, all my slides are very colorful, so thank you very much for that. And we have 5 minutes left, so I just want to, here's my contact, so see you there. I'm going to go and do some questions. Cheers.